Hello, a very warm good evening to all of you, and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to this revision session where we are going to complete and cover all the places in news which have been relevant for your examination, be it for the prelims, which have been in news for the past 5 to 6 months. Now, this is going to be an important but a quick revision session. The aim is that this should be the only session that is required by you to cover the places in news and the portion of maps also. We will also take up some of the question types, for example, match the following and so on, so that you are able to solve those also and you get the practice within the session itself. So try to take a look at those questions and then after that, go ahead with the solution. Now, what is it that we are going to cover today? So, first of all, we have already covered the details of 2025, all the places in news in a detailed manner. The video is there. The link will be available to you in the description below. So, you can watch that and you can gain an insight into the various different areas, for example, where India has had an economic cooperation with, or any other areas which have been in news internationally as well as domestically. Today, we are going to cover those international areas in news, for example, the Hormuz Strait, the various other straits, and so on. Along with that, in India, we are going to cover the protected areas which are in news, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, those which have been in relevance for the past 5 to 6 months. And that is something where you need a final polishing and a revision. So, that is something which we are going to cover in this particular session. Now, without further ado, let us initiate the discussion. Now, first thing that we are going to discuss is the straits of the world. Now, you see, Hormuz Strait is in news, but the chances of UPSC directly asking you about Hormuz Straits are very minuscule. What UPSC follows as an approach is that if, let's suppose, Hormuz Strait is in news, it can ask you about other strait in the world. Okay, so you should be aware about the strait. So overall, what we have done is we have picked up around 18 to 19 of the important straits in the world, and we are going to take a look at the land masses that they separate and also the water bodies that they end up connecting. That becomes very, very relevant. So here, starting first of all with the case of the Hormuz Strait, and please pay attention because at the end of it we have the match the following question associated with this. So first of all, the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Strait of Hormuz, all of you are aware because of the Iran conflict, Strait of Hormuz has turned into a vital choke point whereby the ships, the crude, the LPG and the LNG supply to the rest of the world is getting hampered because the Iranian government and the Iranian Navy has imposed a blockade, and Mr. Trump already is also claiming about imposing another blockade. But having said that, what is important for us to understand is that Strait of Hormuz connects which two water bodies? One is the Persian Gulf with the case of the Gulf of Oman. Both these water bodies are connected. Please understand, Strait of Hormuz is not going to connect Arabian Sea with Persian Gulf. Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman. Another important area that you have to notice in the case of Strait of Hormuz is the islands which are situated here. They have also the disputed islands. There, a lot of ships have been stranded closer to those islands. And also the bordering region of the Strait of Hormuz. Because the Iranian authorities have said that, look, Strait of Hormuz is a discussion point between Iran and Oman. US doesn't have a place in it. So how does Oman come into the table here? So that is where, if we analyze the Strait of Hormuz, you have to understand that this particular peninsula, the peninsula shaped land that you have, that is under the sovereignty of Oman. This is your Musandam Peninsula. Okay, this is the Musandam Peninsula, right? And this is under the sovereignty of Oman. Now that becomes important. So Strait of Hormuz separates which two countries? Iran and Oman. Iran and Oman are separated by the Strait of Hormuz. Then here you have three important islands which are in news, quite substantially in news, and that is the Tunb Islands and the Abu Musa Islands. So you have the Lesser Tun, the Greater Tun, as well as the Abu Musa. Okay, so here the disputed territories or the disputed islands are in news because of dispute between UAE and Iran. Okay, so UAE is claiming sovereignty over that because UAE is claiming that it is a part of the Emirat, right? An older Emirat, whereas Iran has been having that governance over there and claiming that territory for a long period of time, for decades now. So Abu Musa, Lesser Tun and Greater Tun, here you have deeper waters. That is why many ships follow this route in order to cross the Strait of Hormuz. So that is between UAE and Iran. Okay. Now, after that, Bab al Mandeb. Now, with the Strait of Hormuz being blocked, Bab al Mandeb is the one which is in prominence. Bab al Mandeb is a strait here. It connects which two water bodies? Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea. Gulf of Aden with the Red Sea. That is connected by Bab al Mandeb. Now, which two countries are separated by Bab al Mandeb? After all, a strait separates two larger land masses as well. So, Yemen and Djibouti. Yemen and Djibouti are the countries which are actually separated by Bab al Mandeb. So, that is the country that you need to be aware about. Then you have the Strait of Gibraltar. Let's take a look at the global choke points and the straits across the world. Now, Strait of Gibraltar, all of you would be aware about. Strait of Gibraltar ends up connecting. This is the Strait of Gibraltar. Strait of Gibraltar ends up connecting Mediterranean with the Atlantic. Okay, Mediterranean Sea with the Atlantic Ocean. And this is something which has been in prominence since the time of the ancient Greeks itself. It has been explored and it has been used ever since the basic movement across Suez Canal. Strait of Gibraltar again proves as an important choke point. Which are the two countries that it separates? Spain and Morocco. Spain and Morocco are the countries which are separated by Strait of Gibraltar. Then you have the straits associated with Black Sea. That is the Bosporus Strait and Black Sea eventually to the Mediterranean. But which two water bodies are connected? So, first of all, this is the region of Bosporus Strait. Now, Bosporus Strait is connected to or is connecting Black Sea with the Sea of Marmara. Okay. So, when you consider Bosporus Strait, Black Sea with Sea of Marmara, Sea and Sea of Marmara. Okay. That is connected. Now, then you have Strait of Dardanelles. Strait of Dardanelles is here in this region. And this Strait of Dardanelles ends up connecting the Sea of Marmara with the Aegean Sea. Okay? Sea of Marmara with the Aegean Sea. Of Marmara and Aegean. Right? Now, another important factor that you have to note in this particular case, that both these straits, they lie under the control of Turkey. Okay, and Turkey has the control over the passage through these straits as per an international convention. Which is that international convention? It is basically the 1936 Montreux Convention. Montreux Convention. Okay, under this convention, this is something you would have studied in your IR as well. Under this convention, Turkey has got the sovereignty over the region of these straits, and it was in news because Turkey last year decided to close the Strait of Dardanelles owing to the wildfires which started creeping around it. So, for safety purposes and safety reasons, Turkey exercised its control and closed the Strait of Dardanelles. But nonetheless, Turkey does utilize its influence in order to ensure that only the desirable traffic passes through. And that is why, when you talk about the Grange Treaty, which Turkey had and which Ukraine arrived at, that is where these straits of were of great importance. Now, another strait is present in the region of Black Sea, and that is your Kerch Strait. This is your Kerch Strait. Kerch Strait ends up connecting Sea of Azov with the region of Black Sea. That is basically connected by Kerch Strait. Okay, Sea of Azov with Black Sea. And here, in fact, famously, Russia had built a bridge which was blown up by the Ukrainian forces last year. And that is why Kerch Strait was also in use. So this effectively cut off the Russian road link from the region of Crimean Peninsula. This is your Crimean Peninsula to the mainland of Russia. Okay, so that is your Kerch Strait. Then, other than that, so this is your Sea of Marmara, by the way, and this is your Dardanelles Strait here. Okay, Dardanelles Strait, surrounded by small marginal seas, for example, the Gulf of Saros. Here you have Sea of Marmara after the Marmara Island, which is situated here. So Dardanelles is a narrow 65-mile long strait in northwestern Turkey that separates Europe and Asia and is one of the world's busiest maritime networks. So eventually the Black and the Mediterranean Sea, they are connected by the Dardanelles and the Bosphorus Strait. Now, overall, this has been a point of contention since World War One, where famous, the very infamous or famous, depending upon which side do you support, you had the Battle of Gallipoli, where the naval forces of Britain, led by Winston Churchill as a young naval officer during World War One, suffered heavy setbacks. So that is why Strait of Dardanelles has always been important and a vital choke point. Okay, now then you have the Strait of Dover. Strait of Dover, it ends up separating the region of UK with France. Okay, and it ends up connecting English Channel with the North Sea. If you observe, English Channel with the North Sea, and this is the Strait of Dover. Okay. Now, here the two important port cities, they are also relevant for your examination. You study this in the portion of transportation as various different ports. So you have the port of Calais. Port of Calais is situated in the region of France. And then you have the port of Dover. So port of Dover is also the example of your ferry port. Okay. It is also the example of the ferry port, right? So that is the case of the Strait of Dover. And after that, we come to the other straits. But before this, an important announcement for all of you interested in preparing for the civil services: a limited time offer of a discount of 60%, along with up to around 6 months of extension, is available to you. And you can use the code IS English and ensure that your entire syllabus relevant for the mains and the prelims is completed in a time bound manner, and a quality amount of coverage is there. So do avail the offer. The offer ends tomorrow. Now, then we come to the case of another choke point in the northern and northwestern Europe, and that is the region of Skagerrak and Kattegat. Skagerrak and Kattegat, this is present here. This is your Skagerrak, and this is the region of Kattegat. Okay, it is present across this peninsular landmass. And what is the name of this peninsular landmass where Denmark is present? It is basically the Jutland Peninsula. Okay, that is your Jutland Peninsula. So Skagerrak connects North Sea to Kattegat, and Kattegat then connects it to the Baltic Sea. Okay, so that is how basically you have the entire connectivity, and this is where you also had the oil supply from the region going through from Russia, and that is why this is one of the important areas for energy security and serves as an important choke point. So Skagerrak and Kattegat, that is associated with North Sea being connected to the Baltic Sea. But remember, first you have Skagerrak and then you have Kattegat. Then Strait of Malacca. Strait of Malacca is frequently in news. So Strait of Malacca basically provides the connectivity through here, and eventually the ships, the cargo, they move to South China Sea and towards the busy seaports of eastern China. So here also lot of traffic associated with the oil trade, and general trade between China and Europe is facilitated through Strait of Malacca. Now here basically you have another area of interest. That is basically you have the Strait of Malacca here. The ships enter through, and then you will observe immediately to the north of Singapore, they basically enter into eventually the region of South China Sea. So around Singapore, there is another strait which connects it to South China Sea, around Singapore, to the north of Singapore. And that is the Johor Strait. Johor Strait. So Johor Strait eventually will connect the passageway from Strait of Malacca all the way eventually to the South China Sea. That is why Singapore tends to benefit so significantly from the passage of these vessels. And the economic benefit is so huge. That is why the Changi port in Singapore is one of the heavy transit ports, and it is a port of call, and that is where it basically acts as a transshipment hub as well. So that is the Strait of Johor, which is present in Singapore, close to around the region here. Okay. Then after that, you have the Kerch Strait we have already taken a look at. So Kerch Strait provides connectivity between Sea of Azov and the region of the Black Sea. Then you have the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan Strait has been in news for the past couple of years now. It is not something which has recently come into news. So what you need to be aware about, which are the two water bodies that Taiwan Strait connects, right? Because if a question is asked that Taiwan Strait separates which two land masses, even a random person can take an easy guess that one will be Taiwan, other will be mainland China, because that is the news story which is doing the rounds for almost 2.5 years now. But which two water bodies? It is the East China Sea and the South China Sea. East China Sea and South China Sea, they are connected through the Taiwan Strait. Okay. Obviously, the mainland of Taiwan and China will be separated by this. And to the south of Taiwan, you will observe another strait. That is the Luzon Strait. Now, Luzon Strait separates which two land masses? It ends up separating Taiwan from Philippines. This is your Luzon Strait. It ends up separating Taiwan here with Philippines. Okay, so that is why it becomes important. Which two water bodies are connected by the Luzon Strait? You have South China Sea and the Philippines Sea. Okay, now Philippines has been in a lot of news. We have discussed Philippines in the previous places in news video as well. That is why I'm not repeating it. But in the case of Philippines, what I want you to be absolutely particular about, that first is the case of the Luzon Strait, that marks the northern boundary, and then is the water body around Philippines. That is where majority of the candidates, they only have the information about South China Sea, and they have the limited information about Pacific Ocean. But here you have two water bodies, that is the Sulu Sea and the Celebes Sea, right? So that also you should have an idea about. That Sulu Sea separates Philippines from the region of Malaysia. Okay, and then you have the Celebes Sea, which eventually separates it from the East Timor and or Timor Leste. So these are the other two water bodies that one should keep in mind while moving ahead with this. Then Palk Strait. Palk Strait is quite simple. So it basically ends up connecting the Palk Bay with the Indian Ocean. This is the region of the Palk Bay with the region of Indian Ocean. That is the Palk Strait. Okay. Then after that, you have the Tsushima Strait. So Tsushima Strait and Korea Strait, both of them are situated very close to each other. Tsushima Strait as well as the Korea Strait. Okay. So this is where you have the Tsushima Strait. Okay, and then you have the Tsushima Islands on the other side. That is why the name is Tsushima Strait. In fact, there's an ocean current also. So when you have the in the Pacific Ocean, the warm waters of North Pacific current comes through. So one part you would have studied in your oceanography, that is the Kuroshio current, right? Kuroshio current. The other portion which goes through here is known as the Tsushima current. Tsushima current. It is also a warm water current which enters through here. And then right next to it, you find another water body, another strait, and that is the case of the Korea Strait. Okay. So Tsushima Strait and Korea Strait effectively separate Japan from the Korean peninsula. That is what it ends up separating. Okay. Then you have the Strait of Tartary or Strait of Tatar, right? The Tatar Strait, as it is also referred to. Tatar Strait. Now, Tatar Strait is present here, this region. This is your Tatar Strait. It ends up separating the region of Sakhalin, which is very rich in oil and gas reserves, where India has also got strategic investment in that region. So it basically ends up separating the Sakhalin region from the rest of the Asian mainland or the Russian mainland in this case. Now it connects the Sea of Japan, what is also known as the East Sea, to the Sea of Okhotsk. Okay, Sea of Japan with the Sea of Okhotsk. Now when we talk about Japan in itself is made out of various different islands, right? You have Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu. So it is made out of various different island features almost. So here you have another small strait, that is your Sugaru Strait. That is your Sugaru Strait. Sugaru Strait. Now this connects Sea of Japan with Pacific Ocean. Japan and Pacific Ocean. Okay. Now, then it separates which two areas? The islands of Japan, Hokkaido from Honshu. Hokkaido region is separated from Honshu region of Japan by the Sugaru Strait. Okay, Tatar Strait basically separates Sakhalin from Russian mainland. Russian mainland. Okay. Then after that, Bering Strait. Bering Strait ends up connecting Chukchi Sea with the Bering Sea. Bering Sea and the Chukchi Sea. It is connecting water body, but it separates two continents, that is Russia from North America, and that too the Alaska region of North America, which is part of US. So US and Russia are separated by the Bering Strait. Okay. Then you have the Strait of Magellan. Strait of Magellan is situated in the southern part of South America. One of the southernmost straits in the world is your Strait of Magellan. And this overall, you will observe, is present here. Okay. Near the region of Tierra del Fuego. Okay. Tierra del Fuego, partly under the sovereignty of Chile and partly under the sovereignty of Argentina. So that is separated from the region of South America by the Strait of Magellan. Okay. So Strait of Magellan connects which two water bodies? It will connect the Pacific with the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, Pacific Ocean to Atlantic Ocean is connected through Strait of Magellan. Okay, then you basically have another one, that is the Messina Strait. Messina Strait ends up connecting the Tyrrhenian Sea with Ionian Sea. Tyrrhenian with Ionian, and separates which two land areas? Separates Italian peninsula, Italian peninsula from which area? From Sicily. Okay, it tends to separate Italian peninsula and Sicily. That is the case of Messina Strait, the Strait of Messina. Sicily is important this time because when it comes to the US attack or the US and Israeli attack on Iran, the air base in Sicily was in great amount of use. Right. So in Europe, two air bases have been used in great amount by US in order to ferry its forces and the strategic efforts. One is the Ramstein Air Base in Brazil, Ramstein Air Base in Germany, and second one is the Sicilian Air Base in the region of Italy. Okay. Now, then here you will also observe another strait, that is the Strait of Bonifacio. Strait of Bonifacio connects Tyrrhenian Sea with the Mediterranean Sea. Tyrrhenian Sea with the Mediterranean Sea. It is present here. So in the region of Mediterranean and Tyrrhenian, you have two island regions, isn't it? You have Corsica and Sardinia, basically. So here, when we talk about Corsica, the northern island is your Corsica, under the sovereignty of France. The southern island is basically Sardinia. Okay. It is under the sovereignty of Italy. So that is basically separated by the Bonifacio, Strait of Bonifacio. So Strait of Bonifacio will connect the Tyrrhenian Sea with the Mediterranean Sea. Okay. Now let's take a look at match the following, and I want an answer from you guys. So on the left hand side, you basically see on your screen the name of the straits, and the right hand side, you have the connecting water bodies. So starting with, first of all, the Luzon Strait. Luzon Strait ends up connecting which of these water bodies? You have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Let me know that one can be matched with which of them. Can we say D in the case of one? So this is 1D. Philippine Sea with the South China Sea, that is connected by Luzon Strait. Then Strait of Magellan, easy one. Strait of Magellan connects which two water bodies? Here, what is the answer? G. Very good. 2 is linked with G. That is Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean. Which is the landmass? What is the name of the landmass to the south of Strait of Magellan, which is considered to be the southernmost part of South America? Which is that landmass? It is Tierra del Fuego. Tierra del Fuego is the name that you need to retain. Then you have the Kerch Strait. Kerch Strait connects which two water bodies in this particular case? That is I, right? Sea of Azov with Black Sea. That is Kerch Strait. Sea of Azov with the Black Sea. I hope everybody is able to do this easily. Strait of Messina connects which two water bodies? The Strait of Messina. Is it B? Is it F? No, it is H. Tyrrhenian Sea is connected to the Ionian Sea. That is the case of the Strait of Messina. Then Strait of Dardanelles. Strait of Dardanelles is connected or is connecting which water bodies here? This should be easy. This is 5B. Strait of Marmara with the Aegean Sea. Strait of Dover. Strait of Dover connects which two? That is E. North Sea with the English Channel. That is separate. That is connected by Strait of Dover. Strait of Bonifacio. It separates Corsica from Sardinia. So Strait of Bonifacio connects which two water bodies? Tyrrhenian Sea with Mediterranean Sea. Right? Then Strait of Tatar. Now you don't have much options left as well, so it is easy. Strait of Tatar basically is the case of Sea of Okhotsk with the Sea of Japan. And then Skagerrak. Skagerrak connects North Sea with Kattegat. Okay, I hope we are able to do this, right? I hope this is understandable, right? Now, This is the kind of revision notes that you will get. It will be available on the Telegram channel. Within a couple of days, I will provide this, the entire aspect on the Telegram channel. And you would also observe that I have been putting up the PDFs of the maps also. So just revise those PDFs. So your basic concepts associated with the rivers, tributaries, etc., that would also be solved there itself, right? Now, Iran is the place of interest. Iran is the country in news. Now, people are learning almost anything and everything in Iran. Right now, the situation is such, you ask any candidate of civil services that any detail about Iran, they will tell you the district name also. So, chances are that UPSC will not ask you very obvious questions. And you should also not go for the overkill. What do I mean by overkill? That you are ratifying all the nuclear sites in Iran. You are learning every particular city in Iran. Please don't have that approach. That is not at all required. Okay, because UPSC will never look at the trend of the PYQ. And there, UPSC at max will ask you the region and the region where, in which country, or the river nearby, or the surrounding countries. That is what UPSC is concerned with. So please don't start learning each and every mineral resource, each and every district of Iran. Refrain from that. So Iran, when we talk about, first of all, the physiography is important. You have the two mountain systems, that is the Alborz and the Zagros. So Alborz is basically in the northern part. Northern part is where you have the Elburz Mountains. Then you have the Zagros to the south. Okay, Zagros Mountains to the south. Now, here the surrounding land masses are important. The surrounding countries are important for you to be aware about. So, first thing, you have Iraq. Iraq immediately is present in the western part. Now, one of the lakes in Iran is Lake Urmia. Lake Urmia is present here, one of the saline lakes that you have, that is present in northwestern part of Iran. Now, after Iraq, you have Turkey in this region, then the Armenia Azerbaijan area. Now, Iran shares its border with the oil rich region of the Caspian Sea. Caspian is particularly rich in oil and gas, and you have the capital of Azerbaijan, Baku, which is situated right at the shores of Caspian. Then after that, you have Turkmenistan here in the northern border. And then basically on the eastern side, you have Afghanistan and Pakistan. Afghanistan and Pakistan. Now, here you have, other than the Alborz and the Zagros, you have the plateau region and the desert area, the very dry regions associated with Dashte Lut and Dashte Kavir. Dashte Lut and Dashte Kavir are the dry regions in Iran. And here you will observe that the summertime temperature really peaks. So, summer temperature is very, very high. Okay. Now, important regions, important cities in terms of the nuclear installation, I will show it to you that also. But some of them which are in news. One is the city of Qom. Qom is a religious place. Qom is a site of pilgrimage. So this is in news. Why? Because when Khomeini was killed, at that point of, and even now, you have the entire region, or a kind of a mausoleum like structure which is being developed in Qom for the burial. So that is where Qom is a holy city. It is a holy place. It has got beautiful mosques, it has got beautiful architecture. So where is Qom? In Iran. Then here you have the Bandar Abbas port. The Bandar Abbas port, one of the largest ports in the region, and that is important for the trade, right? Esfahan, Esfahan region in Iran is relevant or is in news because of the extraction of the US pilots. So the downed US plane, which was there in Iran. So there the pilots have been extradited from the region of Esfahan. Now here, also note the river. This river is important. That is the Karun River. Karun River is important. Why? because this is one of the barriers associated with the ground troop invasion. If the ground troops were to be introduced, the ground troops would be introduced from the region of Kuwait, right? And when the ground troops would come over, they would encounter the Karun River. And that is what the Iranian forces were banking upon. So that is why this Karun River is very, very important. Okay. Now, then some of the nuclear sites which have been in news. So starting with Bushehr, Bushehr was bombed. Then you have Natanz, the Natanz facility, Fordo facility, nuclear facility, right? Then Isfahan, we have already seen Isfahan, right? Tehran. So these are some of the important nuclear sites which have been in news. Bushehr, Isfahan, Natanz, Fordo, and Tehran, you would be aware about. Okay. So please don't go for the overkill. I have given in the map the region of, for example, Sakhan, the Arak region, etc. But please don't start learning all of this. Not required. Frankly, for the examination, this is not required. Now, when we talk about the physiography of Iran, very rugged country of plateaus and mountains. Now, here you have the Elburz and the Zagros. It is in this mountainous area that the costliest spice of the world is cultivated, and that is saffron. So that makes Iran one of the largest producers of saffron across the world, right? So saffron is cultivated in large numbers in this particular area. Okay. Then the central and the eastern portion, you have the plateaus. That is where you have the Daste Kavir and the desert region of Daste Lut. Okay. Daste Kavir is sandstone and salty desert plateau, and which makes it one of the hottest places on the planet, particularly during the summer season. Then Qatar. Qatar was in news because of the bombing, obviously, and the destruction of the gas field. Now, Qatar is one of the larger producers of natural gas in the world, and it is done from a gas field which is shared by Iran as well, the Pars field. Qatar refers it as the southern or the northern field, and that is shared with Iran as well. So, the gas field which is present in Qatar, that has been responsible for generating close to around 14% of the natural gas supply in the world. But because of the bombings which have been done by Iran, this has taken a substantial hit. And it is said that it will take almost 5 to 7 years to get that back to the case of commercial production in the natural manner. So that is why Qatar is in news. Now, where is Qatar? This is where you have the Qatar Peninsula, right? With the capital at Doha. This is Qatar. Here, which are the water bodies? So you have Persian Gulf here and the Gulf of Bahrain. Gulf of Bahrain is situated on the western side of Qatar because here you have the island of Bahrain with the capital city at Manama. So here it is the gas field which is shared between Qatar and the southern part of Iran. Okay. Now here predominantly flat and arid desert, what is also known as the Hamad Desert. So Hamad Desert associated with the region of Qatar. It has got large amount of salt flats. In deserts you have these salt flats. These are also known as sabkhas. Okay, so you will find the sabkhas in the region of the salt flat. No permanent rivers or lakes are to be found in this area. Minerals, basically, the North Field LNG. Okay, North Field LNG is one of those massive areas where you have large amount of the gas supply. It is the Pars field, Pars area. Okay. Other than that, limestone is to be found. After all, please apply your general logic that you would have studied in geography. Wherever you will find the presence of oil, there are increased chances of limestone also being present there. Take the case of Rajasthan. Rajasthan has got limestone as well as the presence of shale gas and some amount of oil. Why? What is the reason behind that? because oil is formed in the regions where you have had shallow sea. And wherever you have had shallow sea, there naturally limestone will also get created and oil reserves will also get created. All these areas would have been underwater in the geological past, and they have been uplifted by the epirogenic processes of planet Earth. So that is why oil, gas, limestone, they go mostly in the case of the coastal areas hand in hand. Okay. Now here another area which has been in a lot of news is the Al-Udeid Air Base. It is the largest US base in West Asia. This was also attacked. So Al-Udeid Air Base has been attacked. So that is also in news. So where it is situated? In Qatar. Okay. Then Venezuela was in news in 2025, more prominently in 2026 because of the daring act by United States, where it simply managed to kidnap the president. So that is why Venezuela is in news, and Venezuela is having the largest oil reserves in the world. But what you need to be aware about in the case of Venezuela is also the case that largest oil reserve, but it is the case of the heavy crude which is dominant in Venezuela. Okay, not the case of the lighter crude. Okay, what is the difference between heavy crude and lighter crude? Let me know. Now, by the way, the refinery that we have in Jamnagar, that is capable enough to refine the heavy crude as well. Okay, so that is why India gains an advantage. That is why India has signed a deal with Venezuela at the behest of US to take oil from that area. Not many refineries in the world have the capacity to refine the heavy crude. So that is present in Venezuela. Now, in which region of Venezuela do you find this heavy crude to be present? Around a water body, and that water body is the Lake Maracaibo. So here you have the Lake Maracaibo in the northern extent. Okay, this is where you have the Lake Maracaibo here. Okay, now when we talk about Venezuela, Venezuela is one of those countries where the Andean mountain ranges continues. Andes, one of the longest mountain ranges in the world, it covers Venezuela as well. To the southern part of Venezuela, you will have the case of the Guyana Highlands. Okay, Guyana Highlands to the south, Andes to the north, and in between you have the tropical grasslands or the tropical savanna, and that is what is the name of that tropical savanna? It is Llanos. Llanos is the tropical savanna ecosystem. Tropical savanna. Okay. Now, in the region of South America, you have multiple savanna regions. One is the case of the Llanos, another is the region of Campos in the region in Brazil. Pampas, they are temperate grasslands. These are tropical grasslands. Another important factor to note here is the case of Angel Falls. Angel Falls, one of the highest waterfalls in the world, it lies across a river basin, that is your Orinoco River Basin. This is the Orinoco River Basin. It is across that river basin that you will eventually find the Angel Falls to be situated in. Okay, so physical features of Venezuela can be divided into five different areas. The Andean highlands, the highest peak is Pico Bolivar. After Simon Bolivar, the naming is done. Llanos, vast grasslands, the fertile floodplains, tropical savanna. The Guyana Highlands, we have seen in the southern part, site of the Angel Falls, world's highest waterfall, is present. That is the Angel Falls. Then you have the Maracaibo Basin. It has got extensive petroleum fields. That is in the northeastern part of Venezuela. And the coastal plains. That is where you have the region of the valley like structure as well. So, this is your peak Bolivar, Pico Bolivar or Bolivar Peak, right? This is where you have the tallest peak of Venezuela. This is your Lake Maracaibo, very rich in crude. Lake Maracaibo opens up to the Gulf of Venezuela here. It opens up to the Gulf of Venezuela. Now, here, another important area. So, this is your entire Orinoco Delta. This is your Angel Falls. Okay. Another important thing that you need to note here is, in terms of the random facts which can be asked, that Venezuela is separated by Trinidad and Tobago. This is your Trinidad and Tobago. And there is a water body, that is your Gulf of Paria. Gulf of Paria here is connected to the main water body of the Atlantic, which with two straits. Two narrow water bodies are here. What are they known as? They are basically known as, what is the name? It is, we have covered it in the mapping sessions as well. This is your Serpent's Mouth, Serpent's Mouth, and Dragon's Mouth. Okay, Serpent's Mouth and the Dragon's Mouth. Very good. So this connects the Gulf of Paria with the region of the larger Atlantic. Okay. The mineral regions. So in the region of the southeastern portion of Guyana, you will find it is rich in iron ore, which continues even in the Brazilian highlands, eventually bauxite, gold, diamonds. Now here, the Maracaibo Basin, crude oil and natural gas, and you have tar sands. Tar sands are indicative of heavy crude in general. In North America, also, you have a very famous water body which is famous for the tar sands. It is a lake in Canada. Which is that lake? Let me know in the comment section. So, that is also very famous for the tar sands. Very good. Lake Athabasca. Beautiful. Then Lebanon has been in news. Now, in terms of Lebanon, you should be aware about the river, because Israel is attacking Lebanon, and Lebanon has become one of the center stages for agreeing upon a ceasefire between Iran and Israel. So you have to be aware about the Litani River, and you also have to be aware about the blue line. Right? What is that blue line? Both of the things you have to be aware about in terms of Lebanon. Okay. So here, when we take a look at Lebanon, so observe this. This is where you have, first of all, the mountains. You have the Lebanon mountains here, right? Beirut, the capital, shares or is in the coastal area of Mediterranean. Beirut is in the coastal area of Mediterranean. On the eastern side, you have Syria, Damascus. Okay, on the eastern side. This is your the famous or the infamous Litani River. Okay, this is the region of the Litani River. Israel basically wants the kind of control almost up till Litani. It wants a buffer zone between the Blue Line and the Litani River, because Israel sees this as the prime operating area of the Hamas. So that is why it wants to basically use this as a buffer zone. But what is the Blue Line? So, blue line overall is a kind of, it is not an agreed international border. So, this is the kind of chronology. On 25th May 2000, Israel unilaterally withdrew from Lebanon in compliance with the United Nations Security Resolution. In the absence of agreed border, the UN identified 120-kilometer line of withdrawal to confirm that Israeli forces have withdrawn to the south of it. This is your entirety of the blue line. Now, why it is known as the blue line? Because here you will find that blue line barrels like this. The blue line barrels are kept across the entirety of the region, and hence it is known as the blue line. Okay. Now, this is the region of the blue line. Okay. And this is your Litani River. Okay. So Israel wants to capture and control this entire region, the entire territory. Blue line runs all the way from the Mediterranean to the Golan Heights. Okay, so if a question is asked, that border between which region? So Lebanon and Israel, that will be easy. But also connect which two areas? Mediterranean with the region of the Golan Heights. Okay, so blue line, not a formal border, not an international border, but a provisional line overall to confirm the withdrawal of the troops, created after the 2000 conflict, and it is maintained by the United Nations Forces of Lebanon. They maintain this, UNIFIL. Okay. Now, then you have Baltic Sea. Baltic Sea has been in news. Now, in Baltic Sea, I want you to be looking at this is also known as the Sea of Gulfs. You have various different gulfs situated in the region of the Baltic Sea. So, Baltic Sea, first of all, is connected to the North Sea by the Skagerrak and Kattegat Straits that we have already studied. Other than that, observe the various gulfs in the region of Baltic. So here, first of all, you have Gulf of Bothnia. Gulf of Bothnia is the northernmost gulf. After that, you have the Gulf of Finland. The Gulf of Finland has got three important cities and two capital cities which are present. Okay. So, which are the two capital cities? Because it is known as Gulf of Finland, so the capital of Finland will be situated here. So, Helsinki is situated here. Helsinki is situated here. Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, is also situated here. And then you also have St. Petersburg, not the capital city, but nonetheless an important city that is present across Gulf of Finland, larger part of the Baltic Sea. So Tallinn and Helsinki are the capital regions. Other than that, you have the Gulf of Riga. Gulf of Riga has the capital of Latvia, that is Riga, which is situated on the coastline. That is why the name Gulf of Riga. Okay. Then here you have another one, that is Gulf of Gdansk, which is situated here. The Gulf of Gdansk also has got one of the exclaves of Russia, that is Kaliningrad. This is your Kaliningrad. Okay. So Kaliningrad is an important exclave of Russia, important for the strategic purposes as well. Now, other than that, you have multiple important capital cities which are situated in the region on the coastline. So, Stockholm, capital of Sweden; Copenhagen, capital of Denmark. Then here you have the case of Oslo, the capital of Norway. So, Norway's capital, Sweden's capital, and even the case of Finland's capital. It is situated in the region around the Baltic Sea itself. Okay. Then you will have Estonia's capital as well and Latvia's capital also. Okay. So three gulfs and multiple capital cities. That is the case of the Baltic Sea. Then another area in news is the Zangezur corridor. What is the Zangezur corridor? So not that important, but you should be aware about because you never know a randomized question can be asked because it was in news. Now, the Zangezur corridor aims to provide connectivity from the region of Azerbaijan to the region of Turkey, the Anatolian Peninsula. Because what happens is that Azerbaijan, despite having rich amount of minerals, mineral resources in the form of natural gas and oil, it is not able to exploit the economic aspect. Why? Because you have Armenia right next to Azerbaijan, and Armenia offers a kind of an obstruction. So you have an autonomous province of Azerbaijan which is situated on the other side of Armenia. So in order to reach that, you need this corridor. Okay, so that is basically the region of the Zangezur corridor. Okay, this is your Zangezur corridor. Okay. Now, what it connects? It connects the Nakhchivan autonomous province of Azerbaijan with the rest of Azerbaijan and eventually aims to provide connectivity to the Anatolian land. That is the region of Zangezur corridor. Okay. So here, basically, you have Nakhchivan, which is connected with the region of Azerbaijan. So it is a proposed transportation corridor or transportation route designed to connect Azerbaijan's mainland with the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, bypassing Armenia's Syunik province. Okay. Now, Pantanal in Brazil has been in news. Why? Because Pantanal is where you have had the conference of parties held recently for Convention on Migratory Species, CMS. That is why pentanal is in use. Okay, so please understand and retain this for the examination for the prelims, that Brazil this year has hosted two conference of parties. One is the Conference of Parties for uh, Climate Change, the Framework Convention on Climate Change, that was hosted at Belém in Brazil. This was hosted in the region of the Convention on Migratory Species, what is also known as the Bonn Convention, that was hosted in the region of Pantanal. So, where is the Pantanal? Pantanal is one of the largest tropical wetlands region across the world. So here, the carbon storage capacity and capability is excessively high. It is present in the southeastern region of Brazil. It is a low-lying area in comparison, slightly to the north of Gran Chaco. I will show you Gran Chaco as well. Now, during the rainy season, almost 80% of the land is covered underwater. During the dry season, they get cut off. Okay, some of the important species here are the caimans of the alligator species, and you also have the jaguars. Jaguars are also to be found here. Jaguars, they become relevant because of the Global Big Cat Summit that India is to be hosting this year. So, amongst the seven big cats, two of the big cats are not to be found in India. That is the jaguars and the puma, right? They are not to be found in India. So, jaguars can be found in the region of this Pantanal. So, this is the region of Pantanal. Okay. Now, shares the border with Bolivia and Paraguay. Okay. Now, when we talk about the rest of the region of Brazil, this is where you have Belém, where the Conference of Parties was held for climate change. That is the region of Belém. Okay. Amazon obviously being the largest river here. Now, Amazon River Basin, other than that, you have other important river basins as well. For example, the Parana River. The Parana River also originates from the region of Brazil, Brazilian highlands, and eventually empties its water in the region of Rio de la Plata. Rio de la Plata, that is where River Parana empties its water. Now, amongst the tributaries of River Parana, you have an important waterfall created at the Brazilian Argentine border region, and that is the Iguazu Falls. That is the region of the Iguazu Falls. Okay, this is also a very famous tourist place. Observe this region of Pantanal, it is situated here. Okay, this is the region of the wetland. Now, immediately to the south here, you observe a region which is known as Gran Chaco. Gran Chaco is a region where you will find grasslands also, dense forest also, marshy areas also. So, as you move from north to south of Gran Chaco, you will find some amount of marshy area in the north because it merges with the region of Pantanal, low lying area of Pantanal. Slowly and steadily, as you come to the south, you will find the presence of the grasses. That is why Gran Chaco to the south is basically followed by the Pampas, the temperate grasslands. Then Central America, Costa Rica, and Nicaragua were in use. So, where are Costa Rica and Nicaragua situated? So, here you basically have Nicaragua, okay, in the region of Central America, and Costa Rica is situated here. Here, the presence of the countries and their bordering region becomes important. So, for example, up till Mexico, I think everybody is aware about that in North America, you have Mexico. In South America, it starts with Colombia, right? In between, in the region of Central America, first of all, you will have Guatemala and Belize, right? Guatemala and Belize are situated, which share the boundary with Mexico. Then, after that, again, you have two countries which share the border. One is El Salvador and Honduras. Okay, so Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, and Honduras. To the south of it lies Nicaragua, then you have Costa Rica, then you have Panama. This is where you have the Panama Canal. Okay, this is the region where you have the Panama Canal, and this area of Panama and Colombia, this is also what is referred to as what? The Darien Gap. Darien Gap. Okay, that is basically present here. Now, in this region, you have the water body, a narrow water body, which is also used for illegal migrations. And what is that? This is your Gulf of Uraba. Gulf of Uraba. Okay. So remember the case of the entire Central America. You have, first of all, Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama. Okay. So if you take a look at the blank map, do let me know, by the way, which is this island country which shares its border with Gulf of Mexico? Which is this island country? This is Cuba, right? Then this particular region, Mexico, US, Canada, this should not be there. You should not have any kind of doubt. Okay. Then here, which is this country? This particular one. This is the region of, do let me know. This is the country of Guatemala. Okay. So this is the region of Guatemala. Then you have Belize. Then you have El Salvador in this area. Here you have Honduras. Then the country with Lake Nicaragua, that is Nicaragua, then Costa Rica, Panama, and leading to South America. Okay. Now, marginal seas of Arctic have been in news owing to the case of the study regarding the climate change and also regarding India's endeavor to explore the feasibility of the Northern Sea route. So that is where it has been in news. So here, what is important for your examination to be aware about is the region of Arctic, where you have the Laptev Sea, where you have the East Siberian Sea, where do you have the White Sea, the Barents Sea. That is important for you. But first of all, the Northern Sea Route, which has been in use for the past couple of years. So, Northern Sea Route aims to provide the shortest connectivity between the region of Asia, eastern part of Asia, and Europe. Something whereby the distance will be reduced by multiple thousands of kilometers. That is why various different countries are exploring this. So, here, this is the existing route through the Strait of Malacca and the Suez Canal. And this is your Northern Sea route, which will pass through the region of the Bering Strait. Okay. Now, here you observe that this is basically your Northern Sea route. This line. This is your Northern Sea route. This is your port of Murmansk. And eventually, through the Norwegian Sea and the Greenland Sea, it basically enters out. So, here, if you observe the Arctic Ocean, you will basically be observing, first of all, look at the marginal seas. So, first of all, here you have the Beaufort Sea. Beaufort Sea has got one of the rivers of North America, the second largest river of North America, empties itself into Beaufort Sea. And that is this river. Which is this river? This is Mackenzie. Okay, so this is the case of River Mackenzie, which empties itself into the region of the Beaufort Sea. Here you have the Queen Elizabeth Islands, Ellesmere Islands. Here you have the Chukchi Sea. Chukchi Sea, remember, we studied during the case of the Bering Strait. Chukchi Sea ends up being connected to the Bering Sea through the Bering Strait. Then you have the Laptev Sea. Here, first of all, the East Siberian Sea. In this region of East Siberian Sea, another important river stream of Russia enters into the East Siberian Sea. Which is this particular river? This is your important river of Russia. Do let me know the name. Then you have the Laptev Sea here. Okay. So East Siberian, Laptev Sea. Then you have the Kara Sea. To the east of Novaya Zemlya, you have the Kara Sea. Okay. Then after that, here you have the Bering Sea. This portion, here you also have what is your White Sea. It is a marginal sea, that is your White Sea. This is the portion of the Kola Peninsula. Okay, so that is your White Sea near the region of Kola Peninsula. Then you have the Norwegian Sea and the Greenland Sea. So these are the marginal seas across the region of Arctic: Beaufort, Chukchi, East Siberian, Laptev, Kara, White, and Barents. Okay, now here, northern portion of North America, owing to Mr. Trump's interest in Greenland, keeps on remaining in news, and also the fact that critical minerals have been discovered in the region. So here, first of all, we only take a look at the straits because we have already taken a look at the Beaufort Sea and those areas. So the straits, you have the strait that is the Nares Strait. Nares Strait ends up connecting the marginal sea here of the Arctic, that is the Lincoln Sea, with the region of the Baffin Bay. Okay, so that is connected by Nares Strait. Then you have the Davis Strait. Davis Strait connects Labrador Sea with the Baffin Bay, and the Denmark Strait, which connects the Greenland Sea, or basically ends up separating the region of Iceland from Greenland. This is where the highest submarine waterfall has been discovered. That is in Denmark Strait. So that is why Denmark Strait was in news, because the highest submarine waterfall was discovered in this area. Now, owing to the conflict with Iran, India Middle East Europe corridor has again been in news. The importance of revitalizing that. So, you should be aware about the India Middle East European corridor. So, first of all, you should be aware about the port cities here. So, India Middle East European corridor will connect, first of all, the region of Mumbai to the Jebel Ali port in Dubai, in UAE. Right. From there, it will go to the region of Saudi Arabia. Okay. So after that, from the border passing that you have, it will go through Saudi Arabia, through Riyadh. It will enter into the region eventually of Israel through the Haifa port in the Mediterranean. Haifa port is the Israeli port in Mediterranean. It will move through the region of the Aegean and will reach the port of Greece. Italy is also pitching in to develop the port across the region of the Italian peninsula. Okay, so that is the case of IMEC. Okay, so here this is the trajectory. So here Fujairah becomes an important region. All these areas, so you can have connectivity from either Mumbai or from the Mundra and the Kanla region. This is your Haifa port. So India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and Greece, the European powers. Okay, it is a transcontinental economic corridor designed basically to improve transportation infrastructure, seamless connectivity, faster economic cooperation and growth, and eventually removing the choke point bottlenecks that you have. Now we come to some of the protected areas in news in India, because in the past 6 months, when it comes to the places in news in India, they have been largely the protected areas. That is the biosphere reserves, the case of the Great Nicobar project, and some of the national parks. So, Great Nicobar project has been in news. Now, there are a couple of things that you have to look into the case of the Great Nicobar project. First of all, it is the location. So, it is in the southernmost extent of the Nicobar Islands. So, Andaman Nicobar Islands, the southernmost extent. Then you have to note the projects which are being implemented under the Great Nicobar project. There are 4 projects which are being implemented. Then, after that, another thing that you have to note is what? It is basically the protected areas, right? Great Nicobar project has got 2 protected areas, part of the larger biosphere reserve, 2 protected areas, and it is a part of the larger biodiversity hotspot, that is the Sunda Land biodiversity hotspot. So this is your Great Nicobar project. Overall, you have the Campbell Bay National Park and the Galathea Bay National Park, right? These are the protected areas in Great Nicobar. Okay, southernmost point is what? It is your Indira Point. That is the southernmost point. Now, there are 4 projects which are being implemented: gas and solar based power plant, transshipment port and harbor, airport of dual use, that is military as well as the civilian air traffic, and township for the people who will be deployed in all these areas. So that is the region of Great Nicobar. Another thing of importance this year of the region of Great Nicobar is the species. For example, Nicobar shrew, the Nicobar megapod, but that is something we will cover next week with a brief session of species in news. So you will get the video on this YouTube channel itself, where we will cover the case of the species in news. You can cover the case of the Nicobar megapod, the Nicobar shrew, etc. Then the biosphere reserves which have been in use. There are some biosphere reserves which have been in use. Overall, you have a lot of biosphere reserves in the country. The northernmost biosphere reserve is the Cold Desert Biosphere Reserve. Right. Now, Cold Desert Biosphere Reserve, why it has been in use? Because it has been made a part of the World Network of Biosphere Reserves. That is why the Cold Desert Biosphere Reserve is in use. But which are the protected areas under that? That becomes important for your prelims. We'll take a look at it shortly. Then you have Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve in Uttarakhand, where you have the very famous the Valley of Flowers. Then Kanchenjunga Biosphere Reserve at the bordering area of Sikkim and Nepal. Then you have Manas and Dibru-Saikhowa in Assam, right? Dibru-Saikhowa being amongst the smallest biosphere reserves in the country. Then you have Dihang and Dibang in Arunachal Pradesh. Then Nokrek in Meghalaya. Sundarbans, saltwater crocodiles, to the mangroves, to the case of even the Royal Bengal tiger. Simlipal in Odisha, where you have the presence of elephant reserve also, tiger reserve also. Simlipal is always in news because of the presence of melanistic tigers to be found in the region. That is in Simlipal. Great Nicobar Biosphere Reserve, again a part of the World Network of Biosphere Reserves. Shesh Chalam in Andhra Pradesh, this is where Shesh Chalam in Andhra Pradesh is where you have the very famous or infamous presence of red sanders, dry deciduous tree, that is red sanders. By IUCN, it has been put under the endangered list because of the smuggling. Then you have the Gulf of Munnar Biosphere Reserve in this region. Then Agasthyamala, shared between Tamil Nadu and Kerala. Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, shared, the protected area is shared between Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. Achanakmar-Amarkantak in the Bilaspur region of Chhattisgarh serves as a very vital wildlife corridor, and the case of the tiger corridor as well. Then you have Panna and Panchmadi in Madhya Pradesh. Kutch in Gujarat forms the largest biosphere reserve in our country. Kutch in Gujarat is the largest biosphere reserve. One of the earliest biosphere reserves, so this is the list of biosphere reserves, it is easy to retain. One of the first biosphere reserves to be declared in the country is the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, extending across Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Kerala. It is the first biosphere reserve which was established in 1986 itself. Okay. Now, here, overall, if you take a look at the protected areas under the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, you'll find that there are multiple different protected areas. Bandipur and Nagarhole. Nagarhole is basically partly in the region of Tamil Nadu as well. So, Nagarhole and Bandipur. Then, as you cross the border, it is named as Mudumalai Tiger Reserve, Mukurthi and Satyamangalam Wildlife Sanctuary. Wayanad, Silent Valley, and Aralam and Karimpulya, all these are situated in Kerala. So all these are a larger part of the region of Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve has got such great diversity of species because it forms an important corridor for the species moving and migrating between the eastern and the western Ghats. This migration tends to happen during this time, that is the months of summer, when you have some amount of moisture available in the western Ghats, but the eastern Ghats are completely dry. So you will find a lot of elephant migration, but also nowadays tiger and leopard migrations also happen in this area. Then Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve in the region of Uttarakhand. So here you have the very famous Valley of Flowers, which also has got the UNESCO the World Heritage Site. It has got the high altitude ecosystem, and there you will find the alpine meadows, alpine ecosystem, etc. So, Valley of Flowers, situated in the Western Himalayas in the Chamoli district, and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The World Heritage status was given way back in 2005 itself. One of the two core zones of the Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve. You have the river stream, that is the Pushpavati River, that drains through the region. It is a transition zone between the Zanskar and the Himadri ranges. Okay, this is the region of Valley of Flowers. Okay, as you can see, very close to the international border. This is your Nepal. This is the region of Uttarakhand. Okay. Then Cold Desert Biosphere Reserve was actually in news because it became a part of the World Network of Biosphere Reserves. Right. So Cold Desert Biosphere Reserve situated in the region of Himachal. So in the Lahaul Spiti district. So high altitude ecosystems, snow leopards will be found here. But important for you to know which are the protected areas. So you have the Pin Valley National Park. Other than that, you have the Kiber Wildlife Sanctuary and the Chandratal Wetland. So Pin Valley National Park, Kiber Wildlife Sanctuary, and the Chandratal Wetland, they are situated in the region of the Cold Desert Biosphere Reserve. Species: snow leopard, Himalayan wolf, Tibetan antelope, all of these, the ibex and the brown bear species. However, other than snow leopard, the other important species which is in news and which is important in this year's examination is the plant species of sea buckthorn. Sea buckthorn. It is a kind of a very sturdy plant which grows almost in any conditions, has got a lot of nutrient value, and this is in great demand in the country owing to, after all, the popularization by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has mentioned it as one of the super, and it is one of the superfoods. So that is why sea buckthorn becomes important for the exams this year. However, again, let me tell you, let me assure you, we will cover these in the portion of the species in use. Okay. Now, Sundarbans, protected area, the Sundarban National Park and the Tiger Reserve. You have the Sundari tree, the mangrove population present in substantial amount. Manas, declared as a biosphere reserve in 1989. It is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is drained by the tributary of Brahmaputra, that is Manas River. Pygmy hawk, golden langur, elephants to be found in this area. Dibru-Saikhowa, one of the smallest biosphere reserves, declared as a biosphere reserve only in 1997. You have the riverine dolphins and some of the feral horses to be found here. Simlipal, as I told you, very famous for the tiger, elephant, and the gaur population. It is around this region of Simlipal where Debrigarh Wildlife Sanctuary had hosted the Gaur festival. We will take a look at that also. Now, it has got the presence of moist deciduous forest, right? So here you have average rainfall around 100 to 200 centimeter. Tiger, remember, this is where you have the melanistic tigers or the black tiger doing owing to the inbreeding which happens. So that is why genetic diversity is being added in Simlipal. Valmiki Tiger Reserve is in news because of one of the sharpest population increases which is and the population rise which is being observed in the region of Valmiki Tiger Reserve. So where is Valmiki Tiger Reserve? Right at the cusp of the bordering region between Bihar and Nepal, northwestern part of Bihar, in the region of the Champaran area. So that is basically the Valmiki Tiger Reserve. Here, the population of the tigers have increased due to the increase in population of the herbivore species as well. So tiger population has increased from 8 in 2010 to 54 in the last census. And in this census, it is expected, the census which will be carried on this year, it was expected to reach the number of 70. Okay. Then Udanti-Sitanadi Tiger Reserve, owing to the protest by the local population regarding the displacement, that is why it was in news. Whereas Udanti-Sitanadi, it is situated in the bordering region between Odisha and Chhattisgarh. So here also you will find the case of moist deciduous as well as dry deciduous forest to be found here. So Sal, basically forms the dense patches, so tropical dry and moist deciduous. In the region of the Kanke region and North Kondagaon forest, that is where it has basically got a corridor, wildlife corridor, connecting it to the Indravati Tiger Reserve. This is your Indravati Tiger Reserve. So from Achanakmar-Amarkantak, many of the species, and even from Odisha, they tend to use this. So here, along with Indravati Tiger Reserve, this Udanti-Sitanadi is important refuge for wild buffalo. Okay. Then Satyamangalam Tiger Reserve has also been in news. Where is Satyamangalam Tiger Reserve situated? In the region of northwestern part of Tamil Nadu. Right. Now, this is where you have the rainfall received from the southwest monsoon itself. So, this is a moist area. Okay. So, here you will find very ideal conditions for the herbivores and the carnivores to coexist. It is basically very close to the entire Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve landscape. So, it is nestled at the junction of the eastern and the western Ghats in the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve itself, connected with the Mudumalai Tiger Reserve, Bandipur Tiger Reserve, the BR Tiger Reserve, and the Wildlife Sanctuary. Subtropical, dry, but also moist deciduous. Okay. Here, what you have to keep in mind, because Satyamangalam Tiger Reserve was in news, about the local indigenous tribal population. So you have the Irula and the Kurumba tribes. Irula and Kurumba tribes are basically living and are indigenous to the region. Okay. Silent Valley National Park in Kerala. Now, this is the region of Silent Valley National Park. I hope we can see this. Okay. In the in the eastern margins of Kerala. Now, Silent Valley National Park, this is where you have one of the last undisturbed region of the tropical rainforest in India, and unique variety of trees are also to be found. Okay, so it is a World Heritage Site sanctified by UNESCO way back in 2012. It has been declared as the World Heritage Sites. Now here you will find many species of the various different plants, as well as the specific animal species as well. So flowering plants, orchids, lichens, that is something that you will find. This is your the Clinia tree. Clinia tree. This is also very unique to this region. Why? Because this Clinia tree ends up supporting one of the important endangered species, that is the lion-tailed macaque. Very good, Pavan. Lion-tailed macaque. That is basically found in this area of the Clinia tree. Okay? Now, so other than that, you also have the Malabar giant squirrel elephant population, which is present. Now, Tiger Reserve, based upon the case of Bombay High Court ruling and Supreme Court recommendation, the aim is, or the Goa government has been directed to establish a tiger reserve in the region of Goa. Why? Because of the incident whereby you had a female tigress and her cubs which died due to poisoning. So that is where they want a separate refuge area for the tigers in the region of Goa. Now, what you have to understand here is basically, for your prelims perspective, which are the protected areas around Goa, right? You basically have the Kotigao Wildlife Sanctuary here, Netravali Wildlife Sanctuary, right? It is all across the western part of Western Ghats. See, observe the Sahyadri Hills continuously, the presence of Sahyadri Hills. Then you have the Bhagwan Mahavir Wildlife Sanctuary and the Molam National Park and the Mahadevi Wildlife Sanctuary. These are some of the protected areas across the eastern extent of Goa. So that provides it with a kind of a wildlife corridor from Karnataka eventually to Maharashtra. So that is why it is thought to be an important region where tigers can live. So, which are the protected areas? Kotigao, Netravali, Molem National Park, then you have Mahade and Bhagwan Mahavir. Okay? These are the areas proposed for the Goa Tiger Reserve. Okay. The context: the Supreme Court empowered and appointed committee has proposed the creation of Tiger Reserve in Goa to enhance the conservation efforts. Then Ramgarh Vishdari Tiger Reserve. This was in news because of the interstate translocation of tiger from Pench in Madhya Pradesh to the Ramgarh Vishdari region in the region of Rajasthan. This is where it is situated, in the region of eastern Rajasthan. Okay, very close to Ranthambore and the Mukandra Hills. So that is where it is expected that it can sustain a viable tiger population. So it marked the first interstate tiger relocation from Pench to the region of Vishdari Tiger Reserve (RVTR) in Rajasthan's Bundi district. Okay, crucial corridor between Ranthambore and Mukandra. Ranthambore and Mukandra Tiger Reserves are to the north and south, respectively. Here, the Chambal River basin, the Maize River, which is a tributary of Chambal River, that drains through this region. And here, you basically have the rugged terrain of the Aravalis and the Vindhyan topography. Debrigarh Wildlife Sanctuary was in news because of the second Bison Fest, right? So that is where you have the Indian bison, the gores, which are celebrated in the region of Debrigarh. Debrigarh is also in news. It is present in the region around the Hirakud Dam Reservoir. Hirakud Dam, which is built across river Mahanadi. So here you have the Hirakud Dam. This is where on the boundary region you have the Debrigarh Wildlife Sanctuary. This has also been given approval by NTCA for establishment of a tiger reserve. So a tiger reserve is going to be established in the Debrigarh Wildlife Sanctuary. So it is located across the Hirakud Dam on the Mahanadi River, right? It is important historically and art and culture wise as well because it was considered to be the base of the freedom fighter Veer Surendra Sai. Okay, guerrilla base for Veer Surendra Sai. That is why it is always relevant historically as well. Dry deciduous forest, because as you move to the western part of Odisha, dry deciduous forest, leopards, right? Gores, Gores have been in news. Again, we will cover it in the species in news. Then coal wetlands in the coastal area or the Malabar region of Kerala has been in news. But why are coal wetlands famous? So coal wetlands famous for the paddy cultivation, which is very old. Okay. Now here the coal basically Malayalam it translates into bumper crop. That is why the coal of wetlands. Now this is one of the areas where you have the low-lying region, and that is in the low-lying region where the water accumulates. That is where paddy cultivation is generally carried on. So the region, because it is low-lying, you have salt water ingression as well. Okay. Now it is declared as an important area of bird by BirdLife International and also Ramsar site of importance in 2002. It is a part of the Central Asian Flyway. Okay. Then you have the Hokersar Lake. Hokersar Lake is also in news. It is again a Ramsar site. It is present in the region of Jammu and Kashmir. This is where Hokersar Lake is situated, also known as the Hokera Sagar many of the times. It is one of the large natural wetlands near Srinagar. Lot of birds from the migratory route of Central Asian Flyway come to the region. It lies in the Jhelum River basin. You have the water from Dudhganga River, a tributary of Jhelum, that comes through this area. Okay, it is the largest bird sanctuary in the Kashmir Valley, a designated Ramsar site. Now here you have migratory birds from Europe, the crane, the falcons, all of them, they use the route. So here, floodwater absorption and other ecosystem services are also provided. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the discussion when it comes to the places in use. Combine that with the link of the places in use for entirety of 2025, more than sufficient. Now, next week, we will come up with the case of certain videos relevant for your environment. In the next couple of weeks, you will get the schedule on the Telegram channel or on the YouTube channel as well, where you will be aware about the species in use as well as the environmental legislations in one go. We will cover it next week and ensure that your prelims preparation is complete. Okay. So if you have liked the video, please don't forget to share it with your friends. Click on the like and subscribe to the channel. And if you have had content addition and value addition, put that in the comment section below. Till we meet again, revise well, take care, goodbye. Thank you.